Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pandimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pandimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi, everybody, and welcome again to this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa, your fabulous host, and we have, again, wonderful guests all the time. We cover everything every Thursday at noon here on your Zoom channel. Go to greaterwesternstate.greaterwesternnewyork.com to join, and we will send you the Zoom link so you can see these programs live. If you're seeing them repeated on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to like it, follow it, comment, do all the stuff that you need to do on those. This week, we've got a special guest. We have Dave DiPietro. He is the 147th Assemblyman from the Greater Western New York region, covering Southern Erie County and Wyoming County. And he's been in the news a lot. But before we talk about the thing that he's been most interested in and talking about, let's talk to him a little bit about what's going on in Albany right now. Assemblyman DiPietro, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get right to the meat of the discussion. There's a couple of big things going on in Albany right now, and it starts with the budget. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the budget, how it impacts the Greater Western New York region, and maybe what some people are kind of doing about it?
Well, let's start out with the budget. In the last couple of years has gone completely upside down. The economics of the budget is such that going into this year, we were already at about a $3 to $4 billion, that's with a B, $billion deficit. And going in outline years next year, we're looking at, before we even start negotiations, we're looking at a $6 or $7 billion budget and a $7 or $8 billion budget the year after, because the spending by New York City is so out of control that this budget is out of whack and they have no inclination to fix it. So when we're talking about the budget, we're talking about billions of dollars getting lost with one party control, and that's not something we really need right now.
Well, one of the things that we've heard from the viewers is a concern that there may be additional taxes. Now, I thought that the federal stimulus bill brought back money to the municipalities to try to cover for the loss of revenues due to the COVID. What's some of the inside scoop on that?
Well, the one house budget that the Democrats proposed on Monday not only took the stimulus that we have, but it increased the budget. We're over from like 182 billion to over 200. This was out of control. The fact is, they put a budget together that the governor proposed the budget, the Democrat budget in our assembly that they put together, their wish list, it was like a Christmas list a mile long, actually went 8.2 billion over that. Now, the sad part about that budget is, for all of us, is New York City dominates every single thing. So the budget now in the last year, especially, and now this year and coming because of New York City, we're getting crumbs. We're not even getting the bit we got a couple of years ago. We're getting less. We're getting crumbs. We're not getting anything. This budget this year is totally driven to cover up New York City, because New York City is a dumpster fire right now. It's broke. It's out of control. And that's what you get with when you have literally, and I'm going to say it, communists running New York City. You've got a communist mayor, and the city council is made up of communists. They have no perception of how money gets generated in New York. And New York City now, with the power, is just sucking it all down to the city.
Well, that's been an issue for a long time, and we'll get to that in a little bit later about maybe some potential remedies for that. But Is there anything in the budget where you see hope for the greater Western New York region?
I wish I could say there was, and if this was 2 years ago when we had the Senate, we're able to get a portion of money back up to Western New York. Not a lot, but at least we got some. But now with New York City dominating the Senate and the Assembly by supermajorities, I'm not going to sit there and be a doom and gloomer. But no, I don't see a lot of hope this year for the budget for Western New York.
Well, let's turn to the other big story in Albany, and that's what's going on with Governor Cuomo. You've obviously people have been following it. There's all these allegations made from nursing homes to personal scandals. What do you think is real? I mean, there was a question. I actually wrote an editorial on this a week or so ago, saying who's really behind this. I mean, this was not news. People have known what's been going on with regards to the governor for quite some time now. Other newspapers have reported the stories, but now all of a sudden it hits. So what do you think's motivating that?
Well, here's what happens. We all know the governor's a thug. He's not a really nice person, and it's in politics. We're always told, at least I was, on your way up when you're running for politics and as you go, treat people with respect and treat them nice because you don't want karma coming back on the other end. Well, this governor hasn't. He's attacked everyone from back when he was with HUD. That's how he does business. He's a rough and tough New York City politician. Unfortunately for him, when you treat people that badly, okay, they're going to remember it on the way down. So what's happened is as he had all that power, people were afraid to come out. Once the floodgates opened a few weeks ago, all of a sudden it started rolling. As he was tumbling a little bit, people started jumping on the bandwagon. That's it. He's not a well liked person. And when the floodgates opened, everyone decided to come out. And this is what you get when you treat people the way he has.
So it makes people wonder who has the most to benefit if, whoa, there we go, and he's off. And he's back
I'm sorry.
on. Live TV,
Yeah,
folks, this is what you get. It's all coming at you and everything. Anyways, let's go back to Governor. Who stands most to benefit should Governor Cuomo step aside?
Actually, Western New York, because if Kathy Hochul becomes the interim governor to fill out his term, being from Western New York, I think we'll actually get a little more than we would expect. I would love to see that. Not I'm a big fan of hers, but I think A, she's a little more moderate, and B, she knows the plight of Western New York and the rest of the state, and I think she'd be more sympathetic to directing more resources out our way.
It's interesting. I was speaking with a person the other day who I think likes Kathy Hochul, and she had invited him to have a fundraiser for the governor, and he said basically, no, I won't do it for the governor, but I will do it for you. So that's an interesting side note to make. In terms of maybe what it would take for Cuomo to step down, to be convinced to step down, is there a path toward that? Or is he strong enough to kind of withstand this and just simply not run again in his next go
Well,
around?
yeah, that's a great question because I've been telling people, look, if this was 2 weeks from now, after the budget, remember, budget's April 1st, which is right around the corner, and we're in negotiations, not us, the Democrats, for what they want. But if this was 2 weeks, if this was after the budget, you would see a ton more Democrats and people around coming out really strong. But right now, this is the worst time to have the governor under fire because the Democrats don't want to lose their pork. There's millions and millions of dollars at stake for all of them, and he's threatened all of them. It wasn't just Ron Kim; they're all getting threatened. What his ace card was: look, the budget's coming up this month, and you better be quiet, and you better toe the line, or you're not going to get any of your pork. You're not going to get any of your funding, and he's threatened to take them out politically. So, but if this would have been another couple weeks from now, I think you would see a really strong turnout on this governor. But right now, this is a tough one. This is tough for them to stick their neck out with less than 2 weeks left in the budget.
Do you have a sense that maybe this one house plan, the one that raised the money so much, was maybe a negotiating ploy as a countermeasure to maybe a threat to withhold money by asking for more money, so then he can look like he's withholding money, and then they end up getting more than what they originally thought they would get?
Oh, definitely. I think it's all in play. And if someone wants to tell me otherwise, I've watched this for over 8 years now. The corruption in Albany drips off the walls. I tell people all the time. They got their hands out. They take money as if it's their own. And that's what's going on now. I think, how do you come up? The governor gets all that stimulus money. We put it in the budget skyrockets, and the Democrats come back with an 8.2 billion more than the governor's budget. I mean, that's just their way of saying, you know what? Here's our wish list. You want us to settle down and be quiet? You better fund all of our projects, and that's what we're looking at right now. You're looking at corruption at its finest, right here with billions of dollars.
So what happens in 2 weeks? What happens when the budget is passed and there's no longer this Damocles sword hung over their heads? Is everything going to break loose, or are there handshakes that right now going on that will prevent that from happening?
That's I don't know. That's a great question because I don't know who will break ranks. I don't know who would do a handshake and then go back on their word. I don't know how all that's going to play out. But there are deals being cut right now, and I don't know where this governor. That's what really scares me is if I'm a woman, there should be 1 million women around the Capitol, and the fact that there's hardly any women still coming out, it's signaling this man is single-handedly taking down the sexual harassment movement, so to speak, using sexual harassment now. I'm telling you, the next person that gets charged with sexual harassment, a woman that comes out, the credibility is going to be shot because they're going to say, well, you know what? Yeah, you might have accused me, but get 7 more women and then we'll talk. I mean, that's disgusting. I don't get it, but this is what he's doing single-handedly to women and their credibility.
So we actually have a question coming in from one of our audience members, and this is from someone who lives in Penfield, right outside of Rochester, and he's mentioning that there's a parents group that's suing the school district to return students to classroom learning, and he says it's been reported that some school districts in the Hudson region have received a waiver from the state health department to bring students back. So what has been your experience in your district which with regard to this opening up schools, and these are primarily public schools as opposed to private schools, and why may the local health departments have been so slow to opening them back up? Is this a state issue or is it a local issue?
It's a county issue. The counties have direct say in whether they want to open up. I did a press conference almost 2 weeks ago after talking to school superintendents from around the state, and they said the one issue that was holding them up was the governor's executive order 202 to go from 6 feet to 3 feet in the schools. They said, Dave, just do something to go 6 feet to 3 feet in the classroom only, leave every other health issue the same, and we can open up every school. Every school in New York State has the possibility of opening up 100%. So I did that, and I had the head of the Children's Hospital behind it and a number of other people, and I put the bill in, and now 2 counties in New York State have their commissioner and their county executive are opening up. Their counties are opening up, and there's no science behind keeping these schools closed. I repeat, there's no science. But what is really holding them up right now, tentatively, is the teachers union. Is Andy Pilata made a comment that he 100% is against 6 feet to 3 feet in the schools, but with no science behind it.
So are parents left with no choice but to sue their school district?
That's what a lot of districts are doing now. A lot of there's a lawsuit being filed right now in my own district against one of the schools.
Well, thank you. You're listening once again to the State of Greater Western New York report. And this week's guest is Assemblyman David DiPietro of the 147th Assembly District. We're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, we're going to hear an interesting idea that a lot of people might be very, very captivated by. We'll see you in a second.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, this is the State of Greater Western New York report. I'm Chris Carosa. With me today is Assemblyman David DiPietro. He's going to tell us for a moment about this idea that he says, actually a bill, I believe, right, that you've proposed, that would split the state into 3 sections, I think. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it has been talked about for decades, but I was actually the first person that actually wrote the bill, and it splits the state into 3 autonomous sections. New York City, in the Westchester County around that, Nassau, Suffolk, Rockland, that area, Long Island, and then the rest of the state we call New Amsterdam. And that gives us each, we're not separate states, I want to make that clear, but we are, by state constitution, we can do this. We can split into regions, and we'd be 3 separate regions. We'd have our own governor, legislature, and Senate. We would we would be able to rescind all these Albany laws, like the SAFE Act, like fracking. I'm just putting them out there, whatever it is, whatever your region wants. That's what we'd be able to take control. The Niagara Power Authority. Then we'd come together a couple weeks every year and just do state issues like pensions, which would be still statewide. The federal issues that have to deal with the state would deal with them, but we would actually split off and be our own region and govern ourselves.
That's a fascinating idea, especially the fact that it doesn't require us to be a separate state. I'll get to that in a second. But can you explain? I think this idea of an autonomous region is a new concept to a lot of people. Can you explain maybe where it comes from, and other than separate governing and elected officials, what it would mean to the everyday person?
Sure. And I've crunched the numbers. People say that if we don't have New York City, because New York City welfares the rest of the state about $8 to $10 billion or more, whatever the number is, that we would die. And I tell them to be the exact opposite. You talk to any school superintendent, all the unfunded mandates, they'd be able to cut their budgets. How many times have you heard a school superintendent in a rural district say, we can't, why is Albany doing this to us? It doesn't affect our school. It has nothing to do with us, but it's going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. The Niagara Power Authority, right here in my backyard, 20 miles from me, we generate all the electric. If we could control that, we could effectively cut everyone's electric rate in our region by 50% overnight. What would that do for businesses? What would that do for your home energy bill and put more money into your pocket? How about law and order, the bail reform, how much that's costing us, and all these different laws that Albany comes down with, these basically these socialist communist agendas that they give us on welfare. We could reform that over in our district and save tons of money. We don't need to have limousines driving people to doctor's appointments, things of that nature. And we would be able to, go back, change the things that we want to change that fit our region. And the savings would be astronomical. We would open up for business. I think we'd be redder than Texas overnight. Businesses would start coming in here. And I'm not even talking about fracking. If we could open up just that portion of the southern tier to fracking, that's a game changer. We would be redder than Texas, and we would have those middle income jobs would be flying out of here. It'd be great. It would be huge for us.
So let's talk for a moment about the actual process of becoming a state. So we can agree as a state, within our state, we can agree to split up into several states, correct? But that doesn't mean that we could be a state. Can you just tell us very quickly why that's the case?
Well, up until a couple of years ago, the federal government, number one, had no inclination of making a 51st state. They didn't want to add flags on the star or stars on the flag. They didn't want to go through that. And if there was going to be a 51st state, it'd be Puerto Rico. Universally, it'd be Puerto Rico would be the first one to come in. But they didn't want to do that because California was looking at going into 6 different states. Illinois was going to 2. So these regions are actually the regions that I came up with a couple of years ago. Illinois has taken my idea. California's taken it. They dropped the states issue because that's not going to happen. And now they're looking to go into 6 different regions. And this can happen. It'll happen the same way last year's Constitutional Convention vote happened. Remember, it had to pass the Assembly and Senate and then go 2 years in a row, and then it would go to the people to vote on. Same thing, just the way that happened. Same thing here. It would go twice in the Assembly and Senate and go to the people to vote, and then it happens. And
So the
right
bottom
now,
line, oh, sorry. So the bottom
no,
line
go
is
ahead.
that this is something that we, as citizens of New York State only, can control. We don't require any federal involvement. We can do this ourselves. So now,
100% correct.
right. So what's the process, other than the way that you mentioned it? What's holding this process back? I guess that's the big question people have. And in many ways, it makes sense. It gives what we'll call local control over to the people, which I would think everybody would like. What's holding it back?
Democrats, they control the Assembly and the Senate, supermajority, and especially New York City. And I've tried to reason with them right now. With New York City being a dumpster fire, that's what's gonna their budget's so out of whack that at some point uh, they're gonna want their money back, so to speak. The money they say they welfare us, that they would want to take that back. And this is the way they can do it. Look, I say, look, keep all your money that those corporations and the businesses in New York City, the stock market, keep all that money. You need it, okay? And we'll go off on our own and let us sink or swim on our own. Because I think what's going to happen, the numbers I've put together, we swim, they sink. You cannot live with a communist government and thrive.
So one of the questions that I have is why only three? I mean, why not four or five? It seems like we have some natural regions within the state already. Even, for example, the big New Amsterdam, as you call it, could be 2 or 3 regions, not just one. I mean, there's certain similarities within the greater Western New York region, which are unto the greater Western New York region and make it different from, say, even Syracuse or Binghamton or Albany. So why just have them all bundled together, especially if we like the idea of more local control and more autonomy?
Oh, that's a great question, and we've always put that out there. Originally, my plan was to divide it into 2, uh, the Western R region and New York City, because New York City is the hub of all the problems for the rest of the state. So, but when a few years ago, when I was muddling this around, the Long Island contingent said they didn't want any part of New York City either. So they said, please cut us off. So we did, and we made it into 3, and we just left it at that. You could go to 4 or 5, no problem, but we've just kept it at 3 just because that's where it is. No one, we could easily go more.
So let's say people are interested in this idea. Is there anything that they could do? Is there a club or an association or a group? I don't know what they would be called. That maybe you've been starting up or somebody's been starting up where they can make their voice heard. Say even if they want to have a separate Greater Western New York Autonomous Zone or just the idea in general. Where could people go to voice their support for
Well,
this?
sure. Well, I have a website called splitthestate.com, one word, splitthestate.com. And you can sign the petition there, which I'd love to, and have everybody share that. And let's get as many people to sign that as possible because we've got a huge groundswell, and it just gets more as you see with the budgets and everything every year now. But we're at that tipping point now where I really was hoping that in the next year to 2 years that we've got the groundswell. I'll be going around, if weren't in COVID protocol, I'd be going around the state right now. I've been invited in about 7 or 8 counties already to speak. 2 counties right now are actually proposing that. Genesee County, right around this area, as you know, has already given it to their legislature to pass it and to adopt it, just like the SAFE Act, when 57 or so counties, 54 counties, went on record against the SAFE Act. We're starting to do that in the next few months on Split the State.
Which 2 counties are those?
Well, right now we got Genesee and Cattaraugus looking at it.
Ah, okay. So that's certainly one thing people can do within their own county region to promote
Right.
this idea. Last month we had, and every month we feature a political person on. We don't always talk about politics. Sometimes we talk about history. History's a big thing, science, nature, business, that sort of thing. But last month we had Assemblyman Stephen Hawley on, and he had his own idea to just start what did he call it? Some sort of group, investigative group, or an analysis committee, just to look at the idea of, I think he was talking about splitting the state into separate states. So have you been working together with him at all, or are you guys at odds, or how does that work?
Oh, no. Steve is a great friend. I sit next to him. He's like my compatriot up in Albany. No, we're very tight. And he has a bill to do the study, which we need also. I have the bill to actually split. He has the bill to study it so that we can really crunch the numbers. We're crunching all these numbers on our own and calling Albany, but this study would actually have Albany crunch these numbers. The state comptroller would get involved and get these things really put on record so that we've got an actual record of it, so that people can look at it and go online and get hard copies of it. So that's what knows. We're working together. One works with the other.
So are there any other assemblymen or senators who are helping you on this, who might be advocating for you? And also, is this potentially a bipartisan thing?
It's yes, I do have a lot of co-sponsors on it. Senator Rob Wart, who's the majority leader in the minority leader in the Senate, has taken my bill, so he's running it in the Senate. He's got a lot of co-sponsors, and this is it has to be bipartisan because I need the Democrats to come along to agree to it because they're in the majority. So, but as New York City keeps with their fiscal mismanagement, at some point there's no more. We're in COVID, so we got a huge bailout, but there's not going to be another bailout. So they're going to have to live up to the economic impasse that they're putting us together, not just now, but next year. Like I said, next year the budget's so skewed that we're looking at billions of dollars in the hole just to start again, and there's no money to bail that out. And you can't keep taxing.
Do you think that there are some Democrats from Western New York who might support this, especially since the autonomous thing gives local control that I would think anybody would be in favor of?
No, here's the thing. No Democrat in Western New York is going to step out of line with the majority in their conference. So until I get New York City comes to the conclusion that they're in big trouble, and the more they tax, the more these corporations and Fortune 500 companies start leaving, and as they have been, they're going to have to come to a reality that this is their only hope. But no Democrat in Western New York is ever going to step off the party line to support this, because until their conference does, until they come together.
What about just registered Democrats as opposed to elected officials? Again, this is.
I think a lot of registered Democrats are in favor of this. Just the education system for your school children. What a mess. If we were our own region right now, our schools would be open. I guarantee it. Okay, we wouldn't be under the New York City thumb and all that's going on. We would be open because we would have control of that. We wouldn't have Governor Cuomo's edicts. We would probably be looking at the science more, and we wouldn't have shut businesses down the way the governor has, and the restaurants and the gyms and the hair salons. We would have, it would be totally open. It'd be a lot different. We'd have our freedoms back.
Can you give us Can you give us the name of that website? We're going to have to break now. But can you give us the name of the website again that people could go to? This has been fascinating. And I'd like to have you back on, perhaps with Steve Hawley, to talk about it, or maybe some other people. We could do this with more than one person. But give us the name of the website again that people can go to sign that petition.
Yeah, splitthestate.com. And Senator Rob Wart would probably be glad to come on too.
All right.
Splitthestate.com.
Well, Assemblyman DiPietro, 147th Assembly District from the Greater Western New York region, thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts and ideas. And like I said, hopefully we'll have you back again later.
Thank you very much.
This is Chris Carosa once again thanking you for watching this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Again, we're here every week, all the time, and keep coming. We'll be here. Bye-bye for now.